I'm Gab. He's Jules. Grey skies over West London. Grayer skies still over Manchester
Aye,
United.
aye, aye.
Because guess what? Ruben Amorim has official statement, official words of the club, departed the club.
Yeah, it's been
Wonder if
sacked, basically.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a little bit like the way
Yeah.
Nicolas Maduro departed Venezuela, maybe.
course,
But look, we're gonna obviously that's going to be our main segment. Surprise, surprise, because United, I'm told, are massive. Well, also obviously we're going to get into City and Chelsea and their draw, Arsenal winning, Liverpool madness at the end there. Joan Garcia, a hat trick for the Real Madrid center forward, not named Kylian. How about that? But Jules, let's start here. And my first question is for those who don't know. Yesterday on Sunday, he goes into the press conference and he says, I came here to be manager of Manchester United, not coach. Which, by the way, if you look closely, his nose was getting longer when he said that because his official title is head coach. You can go, that is how United announced him,
Yeah.
and whatever else. Does he mean that I wanted more control over transfers and stuff
Yeah,
like that at the
definitely.
club, blah, 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 whatever. To come out, he also came out and flatly said in 18 months he's going to be gone.
Yeah, at the end of his contract.
At the end of his contract. He also came out and flatly said he's not going to quit. And he also definitely appeared to call out all the different departments, including the recruitment department, which is run by sporting director Jason Wilcox. So my question, I know this sounds so stupid, but did something glitch in his brain where he says, let me do something, a power play so crazy that they have to sack me and I can go on holiday for a while? Or did he say, let me lay it on the line and kind of say like it's either him or me, or like I've been disrespected so far, I'm in charge, and you guys are going to bend over and do as I say, so that I can have more power in January? Which one is it?
I think it's more the second one, really, but that was never going to work anyway. So I think we've seen this coming in the sense that in his press conference before this Leeds game, the one after the Wolves game in midweek too, where he was quite cryptic in his kind of criticism of the club and people above him and the sporting director, and kept saying, I don't want to answer those questions, but there was clearly the
Questions for Jason, he said.
Yeah, and questions around, something changed around how much you could spend, for example, in the transfer window in January, how much you could do, how much you're involved. And he kept saying, I don't want to answer, but it was all very cryptic, and all clearly he wanted to say more and maybe didn't want to at the time. Fast forward 3, 4, 5 days. And then I think that kicked off yesterday after the Leeds draw. Had they won that game, maybe he would have behaved differently, although I think he got to a point between him and Jason Wilcox, Omar Barada, all those people above him, that there was so much tension that it was inevitable for somebody like, because we can like him or not, think he did a good job or not, and probably not, to be fair. But one thing he's always been is quite honest and open. Probably too much. We said too emotional, given too much, even to the press, to us, by being too transparent, too honest. So I think that also is the same way, except that when you reach, I think, that kind of level of issues between him and the club, there was no other way. Like, we were not surprised this morning when it was announced that they were going to sack him.
So, all right, so I think United had no choice but to sack him after what he said yesterday.
Yeah.
Or at least to address him and have him, a massive public apology. They chose the one for the sacking. I think it's the right decision.
And if he doesn't want to be there in 18 months after the end of his contract, that means he doesn't want to be there now anyway. So there's no point keeping him.
He effectively gave them no choice. However, look, and I think United are better off. They're better off now without him. Because like you, I appreciate his honesty, his willingness to talk about football. But the results just weren't coming. And this cloud of negativity just got to be too much. Now, all that said, if I am the Glazers, who still own this club despite your friend Jim Ratcliffe, I am holding everybody to account here. I'm holding Wilcox to account and Barada, because I want to know, how did this situation degenerate to this point where this guy can come out and basically humiliate the club in this way? And I would have a lot more respect for Ruben Amorim if it is the case that you said, that he wanted to leave because he'd had enough and whatever else. Then, bro, be a man and resign. Be a man, come out, grab your stones, and say, I am resigning. I don't want to work in these conditions. If that is the case.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean,
You
the
don't go
line
and
about,
move the goalpost and say, I am the manager, I'm the big boss. Who the hell are you?
I think the line about coach and manager is that. It's exactly that. I know the title is head coach, but what he meant was like a coach comes up, does his training, take the team, and that's it. That nothing else. He wanted to be a manager. They didn't give him that. It's his fault. Therefore, we don't know.
No, it's
yet.
his fault. It's his fault.
Maybe it's
his fault. He signed up to something.
But
And don't compare yourself to Conte, Mourinho, and Tuchel. Just don't.
But that's what he did, because I think he wanted that role. He didn't get it, or he got it and then something changed, which is possible as well.
He wanted that role. When I was 18, I wanted to drive a Maserati. I wasn't able to. We're going to break this down a lot further on the Gab and Juls podcast. All right, Jules. So if I'm one of the Glazers, in fact, let's both be Glazers.
Yes,
do you want to be Joel or do you want to be Avi?
It's a tough call, really.
I'll be Joel. He's a little more normal.
Yeah, okay.
And I think you can probably pull off like the ponytail
fair
at
enough.
some point better than I can. What are you thinking? Like, seriously, because I said it before. I want to get your view. Am I unfair in thinking that in any organization, in any corporation, part of your job as a boss, so this applies to Barada, it applies to Blanc, it applies to Jason Wilcox, is keeping your employee in line.
Yeah.
Right? And knowing that he has the resources, and if he doesn't have the resources, just making sure he doesn't go public with the kind of stuff that he said.
Yeah.
You ask, how did this happen?
Yeah, you ask for sure. I was told as late as yesterday that Amorim had become very difficult to deal with for the people above him, like Jason Wilcox, like Omar Barada, and that might come from the club. That might come from the club, and Amorim might have a different view of it himself and thinking, no, I wasn't being difficult. I tried to help. I tried to be open. I wanted to be the manager, to be part of every process within the club, but he didn't let me. That I think that will be his message when he finally talks in the next few days or few weeks, whatever. From a club point of view, clearly, he was being. They felt he was being difficult. They clearly didn't align on what should happen in this January transfer window after spending a lot of money already in the summer transfer window. The players that he wanted, and Bomo is for him, Cunha is his, Sesko is his, all of that. So I'm not really sure if one is more to blame than the other, the club, the Amorim, because they probably have both their part of responsibilities. But you're right. This is embarrassing from a Manchester United point of view to see him yesterday. And you know what I thought yesterday, Gab? His face when he was, because you could, sometimes, as you know, some of those managers are super smart and you can use the press to your advantage. You can manipulate a little bit. It doesn't have to be the full truth. But his face looked so angry yesterday in his post-match press conference after that game against Leeds. He felt so assertive and so there was something clearly how angry he was. Not so much about the score and the result and the performance, but more what he wanted to say. And clearly he'd been waiting to drop that bombshell, really, knowing that was probably the end. And then, after that, he was going to be gone. So, I don't know. It's quite a fascinating story, I think.
Yeah, it is, because I agree with you. Some managers are very manipulative, some successfully. But he never struck me as somebody manipulative in any way.
Emotional. Yeah, absolutely.
We said he was honest, maybe sometimes too honest. He generally towed the company line. What I think was interesting, and I think kind of ties back to this a little bit, is remember the interview that Bruno gave in Portugal?
Yeah.
A couple months ago, when he said the club wanted to move me in the summer.
Yeah.
But Amorim stood up for me and he wanted to keep me. Now that I feel like that's kind of come and gone and didn't necessarily receive all the attention it should have received. Because from a footballing perspective, I think we both agree on this. Bruno Fernandes is Manchester United's best player.
Yeah.
But he doesn't fit into this 3-4-2-1 system.
Not really.
When I say doesn't fit, I mean, yes.
In his best position, yeah.
He's in his best position, right? And presumably, Amorim felt the same way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed Cunha and Mbeumo to play his position. Instead, he makes him play in front of the back four because he can pass, unlike the rest of the Muppet Show there. To me, after that, and maybe this happened, I don't know. But if I'm Barada, in addition to having a word with Bruno and saying like, bro, watch what you say. I know you're upset, blah, 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 and you're important, but this has kind of created a problem for the club and probably for Amorim as well. Because also, we don't know if it's true. We don't know if Amorim came out and said, oh yeah, Bruno, I'm going to fight to keep you. And this is like, guys, get rid of him. I'd rather have 65 million and save on his wages so we can buy other players, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I would have done.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I wouldn't have lied to Bruno, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At that point, you need to, like to me, that is a big warning sign.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And I would say, Ruben, did you go to Bruno and say, we tried to get rid of you, but you saved him? And if that's the case, if Ruben Amorim did keep Bruno at Manchester United, how does he complain that he's not in charge? You mentioned all the
signings. Was the
beginning.
Maybe that was the start of the issues. Maybe that's the start where they didn't actually agree on things. Because if your boss want to get rid of what you think is your best player, your captain, that you want to keep him, and on that case, the club clearly went, okay, well, we go along with you. I think that's the start. We've said it so many times, Gabi. This kind of spine in your club, CEO, sporting director, manager, head coach, call it whatever you want, has to be on the same line for you to be successful. In a way or another, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be best friends. But you have to be. Everybody will have to be on the same page.
Aligned.
Yes.
Yeah. But you agree at the same time, though, there has to be a hierarchy.
Yeah, of course. But then you will have managers in some clubs that take more space than others. In other clubs,
fine.
Some CEO have bigger personalities in some clubs than others. Some sporting directors, if you have Jason Wilcox or Michael Edwards or Andre Alberta, it's not the same thing, obviously. Right?
But this is part of the thing that bugs me a little bit. I know Omar Barada has spoken a little bit, not over this, obviously, but in the past. Jason Wilcox, as far as I can tell, is a mute. I don't know if he's had any kind of meaningful...
But sporting directors don't really talk in this country anyway.
But this goes back to my point.
Yeah, no.
But I think they should, and especially now, rather than just having 3 weeks of speculation, Darren Fletcher, who's the interim coach, thrown out there to say, oh, you gotta ask the club, blah, 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 because he has to do the press conferences, but he's not going to know anything. I think this is where somebody needs to come out and say what happened, because everybody seemed committed to this project. Everybody said, we're going to be patient. We're going to build 3-4-2-1. He was one of the hottest young managers around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ratcliffe, remember in that one of the rare interviews he gave, he said we need to give him at least 3 years.
Exactly.
It has to be there for at least midterm to try to build something here. The thing I would say, Amorim worked really well at Sporting in a very different environment, but his sporting director was Hugo Viana, who is now obviously at Manchester City. They were so close. They were on the same page. They were best friends. And I always think this works so much better. As soon as you and your sporting director, especially as a head coach, are not aligned, this got trouble written all over it. And that's exactly the case.
And you as a sporting director, you hire the guy, so you have the responsibility to hire somebody who aligns to the club's project.
Obviously. Wilcox wasn't there when they picked Amorim. Wilcox arrived after. Remember? It's the whole...
Yeah.
What's his name? Dan...
Oh my God, Dan Ashworth.
I'm not
Accountability.
sure.
But this is the thing, right? You can point to this bearded man, if you're watching us on YouTube behind me, Jim Ratcliffe, and say, well, the buck stops with him. No. The buck in the end stops with the Glazers.
Yeah.
The Glazers control the money at the club, which means they control the football.
Yeah.
Amorim does not go if the Glazers don't say yes.
Yeah. Sure.
So I think that's also important to bear in mind. They're going to keep a very low profile now, and you can understand why. And the onus is going to be on Ratcliffe and Barada and so on. But let's be clear on this. There has to be accountability. And I wonder, when we look back at these 14 months, like United are joint fifth in the table with Chelsea.
Yeah.
They're sixth, actually, a little behind them because of goal difference. But as you know, I don't believe in goal difference. You can look at that and say, well, that's obvious progress, given they were, 15th last year.
Mm.
On the other hand, as we said many times, this is a weird Premier League season.
It's a bad Premier League season.
Yeah. They're a couple defeats away from being 15th again.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're not a couple wins away from breaking into the top three because they are 12 points behind Villa in third. Something like that?
Something maybe, yeah.
Or 11, I think.
11.
So we're talking about forward progress. Where is the forward progress? And they're not playing European football this year. We cannot stress enough how much of an advantage that is.
Absolutely.
So, have you seen this progress?
No, well, I think we've seen a little bit, to give him credit, a little bit this year, which was inevitable because, as you said, Gabby, no Europe. They've spent 300 million in the summer on 3 players, especially Cunha, Sesko, and not 300, but not far, and Mbomo, which naturally would improve this team because they are good players, all 3 of them, especially, I guess, Cunha and Mbomo for being Premier League proven and some of the best Premier League players of last season.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's getting excited over Sesko yet.
Yeah.
That's a slow burn, long-term project.
But it's still a lot of money invested in those 3 players. So you were going to get better for sure. But it's the progress has been too minimal. Too minimal, I think for all of us here. You watch them again against Leeds, and there's a lot of players missing, but there's fragilities to this team massively. His rigidity over the system, we've talked about it so many times, has been an issue for so long, and yet he was so stubborn, never wanted to change, which I think really wondered people above him at the club too, because they could not understand why he was not ready to just tweak a little bit, have a bit more variation, have all of that. But he never really did until a few days ago. So I think for me it's a story of what could have been, because I think he's a good coach. I really do. I think he's a good guy. It's just that maybe this job was too big for him, being too young for it at the time, because he'd only had 3 years at Sporting, and as we know, it's very difficult to come to the Premier League from a league like the Portuguese league at this time when you were that young and so unproven. And that is it for me. I don't think he would have ever succeeded there. It would have been okay-ish. They probably would have finished maybe 5th or 6th this year. But that was just peppering over the cracks. I don't think he would have never succeeded there.
Jose Mourinho, we're sitting here, he would say,
True,
but Jules, I
so it's not.
I
was thinking about him.
Wait, and Mourinho would also say, I also won the Cup Winners' Cup, Jules.
Yes, true.
Why are you giving me credit for that?
No, that's true.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. And you can look at individual players that he got the best out of. Amad Diallo is one. We saw glimpses of Mount improving.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know if there's anybody else, frankly. I don't like the Cunha signing for longer term, but he has been productive. Yeah. No argument there. But is there anybody else who's actually improved with him there?
I don't think so. I think Shaw looked decent. For example.
Yeah, but I'm talking about more like players you're developing for the future.
Yeah,
obviously, Shaw played and wasn't terrible.
Yeah. No. I don't think so. And to be fair, even if you just look down at the trophies, 0 that Europa League final lost against Spurs to one of the worst games we've ever seen in recent history in Europe. If you look at his win ratio, simply don't even look at the performances. Just look because you can look at the performance and we can all have slightly different opinions or whatever. But his win ratio is just terrible in the Premier League. It's terrible until a few weeks ago, he'd never won back-to-back Premier League matches, for example. How is that even possible when you're a Manchester United manager?
I think what you're saying, but without saying it, is 100% the right decision to sack him.
He was just not good enough. I would have given him until the end of the season, without a doubt, though. But, yeah, it makes sense on every level.
Let's talk about the long-term replacement, assuming Darren Fletcher isn't going to be the permanent manager. Like the bookmakers already have names out there,
of course,
but it's instant knee-jerk stuff, and I don't know how seriously we need to take this. It seems like they picked Maresca because he's been in the news recently. They're mentioning Oliver Glasner, who's out of contract at the end of the season. I think Marco Silva is also out of contract at the end of the season. They picked Iraola. They mentioned Xavi. More interesting to me, I think, is what should the profile be? Because obviously, Amorim has a specific profile. If you want, he won league titles in Portugal, but if you were to compare, Amorim's maybe profile more similar to Iraola, who we both really like, in the sense that very distinctive style of play. Iraola has Premier League experience, Amorim did not, but Amorim had won silverware, Iraola had not. Or maybe even Glasner is kind of in the sense that Glasner's never really coached a team on this level.
Yeah.
Or Xavi is the big name who has coached and won with Barcelona until he didn't win. and is free and available. You could look for more of a brand name.
Yeah.
You could go and, Glasner's out of contract in 6 months, right? So I think it would be expensive to get him out now, but you could do it. You could also aim higher and say, let me go for a real brand name manager.
Yeah.
But that seems to have kind of fallen out of favor around Europe, except for in Italy, where we're always behind.
Yeah,
We've got
true.
Max Allegri and Spalletti, whatever. But the trend among bigger clubs certainly is not that.
No, you're right. It depends what kind of guy they want as well, because if the problem here...
What would you want? What if they could call you Jules and say,
So I
Jules,
think-
are we ready for another kind of experimental Iraola Amorim type?
I think this is a great chance for United to get back to the Champions League without actually being good enough for the Champions League. But yet, because this Premier League season, as we said, is average, and we love the Premier League. It's the best league in the world, everything you want. But nobody can tell me the quality this season is great.
And when Villa win the Europa League with Unai Emery,
Yeah, it's
then
true.
they'll have 6 teams.
Yeah, again. But so this time, I think, is a huge opportunity for Manchester United without Europe already then. So just one game a week to get ready for, to break into that top 5 when they're actually probably not good
Right.
enough to be in the top 5. Don't miss this opportunity. You have to make it count, because next season, you would think, but I know I said that last year, but next season, Chelsea will be better, and Villa will be even better, and City and Arsenal will be better, Liverpool will be better, Spurs should be better, Newcastle should be better, all of that. So take the opportunity now, and for that, I would, maybe another season, you think, okay, forget almost about the next 6 months, get Carrick in or Fletcher in to see out the season, do the best they can, maybe reconnect with your own fans by bringing somebody who knows the club, who's been there before as a player, like a Carrick, Fletcher, Rooney type, whatever they want, and then get ready to appoint somebody on July 1st. It could be Carrick if he does well. It could be somebody else. Get your transfer lines up already and go again next year in a much better mood, blah, 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 all of that. Not this year. This year, I think it's a really big chance that they have to finish in the top 5 to qualify for the Champions League. Don't miss it. So go and get somebody like Xavi, somebody with experience, with pedigree, with a big character, with whom you're going to work. Because if it's again to have the same issue in 12 months, 14 months, 16 months, because the guy say, hang on, I came here, I wanted to do this and that, but the club didn't let me, there's no point. So this time, make sure that your sporting director actually chooses the coach, and we said how important that is instead of the other way around, and get everybody on the same page and get a fresh start. But
Right.
I personally, I would not go for interim. I would not go for an experiment. I would go for somebody confirmed.
So Xavi. But is
Somebody
Xavi
like
enough of
Xavi.
a confirmation? Well,
Yeah, I think so.
Because he's been at Barcelona, and
I think
it's
so.
not many years managerial
but-
experience, and it's one at a very specific club that he knows inside
True,
out.
very
That's the
true.
flip side.
True.
Yeah, I would start. Okay, I would. Omar Barada has to be part of the process, but I would get Omar Barada to sit down and review everybody. Review Jason Wilcox.
Okay, yeah.
Find out how often did you talk to Amorim? What did you talk about? How did those conversations go? Because obviously he's in the loop to some degree, and I would make my decision, and I would decide: do I want to continue with Jason Wilcox? Because we can turn this around one way or the other. But the Bruno Fernandes Saudi story, which Bruno Fernandes obviously took very seriously, if that's true, it means Jason Wilcox was talking to somebody, right? That's his job as sporting director.
Yeah.
How much did he know? How much did Amorim know? What were those conversations like? And ask yourself, is this the right guy to have this?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
or redefine the role. Because, before when John Murtaugh was there in charge of recruitment, as I understand, John Murtaugh wasn't really involved with the first team, right? He would manager would say, or the club would say, we want this kind of right back, and he would go off to negotiate. That is a different type of sporting director. But if you want a sporting director who is at the training ground, who is part of it, who is a proper liaison to the ownership, which I think is kind of what a good modern sporting director should be.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, is it Wilcox? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. He's had experience with the first team. But you have to have, the review has to start at the top. And like you said, it has to be Wilcox or whoever the sporting director is that picks
Yeah,
the next
absolutely.
manager.